I caught up with former Prime Minister Scott Morrison earlier today. I asked him about the wider ramifications of all this and whether this was the moment that Australia turned its back on Israel.
The short answer is yes, and importantly on the Australian Jewish community. They just must be, well, I know they are just completely devastated by this. The country of which they've played such an enormous part over such a very long period of time, going to no back no greater than John Monash, and here we are turning our back on them, turning our back on the state of Israel. I'm pleased that some nations still stood by them. It is a complete reversal of a policy position that had been held on a bipartisan basis for many, many decades. There'd been a great history of that and standing with Israel. And this government has taken the complete opposite path. And I'm just full of disappointment and sadness about it.
Now, the current opposition are saying they would overturn this in government, and that's relevant in this case because no matter how long it takes them to return to government, there won't be a Palestinian state by then, will there? This is a meaningless gesture. The United Nations Security Council won't admit a state of Palestine. It doesn't exist in any real sense, and it won't.
Well, it's fantasy diplomacy. I mean, this is appeasing various interests in domestic constituencies and more broadly. Look, I have no doubt about the genuine intent of wanting to end the suffering in the Middle East, but this doesn't achieve that. It's a cul-de-sac. It doesn't actually advance the sort of things that need to be addressed. They sort of want to skip to the end and go, oh, we'll just recognise the state. Well, at the same time, what state? How will that state function? Can it deliver health services, education services? Can it deliver the internal security, let alone the external security? What guarantees are there for its neighbours, in particular Israel, that the events of what occurred on October 7, the worst massacre of Israelis since the Holocaust, would never happen again? I mean, all of these questions are just left on the side. And glossed over, not least of which is the question of the remaining hostages. These are the ones who have been most utterly abandoned in this rewarding of one of the worst terrorist acts we've seen against the Israelis, if not the worst, obviously, since the Holocaust. Where is our memory?
Exactly. Is there anything you have heard from Anthony Albanese, Mahmoud Abbas, Emmanuel Macron, any of the key figures in this, Keir Starmer, that either explains how we will get the hostages back, how the Israeli hostages will be returned, or secondly, and perhaps most importantly, how Hamas will be disarmed and kept from assuming power again in any future state?
Well, of course not. And I don't think there's any attempt to. I mean, the suggestion that the Palestinian Authority is somehow going to have Hamas hand in all of their weapons and stand aside is laughable. And if that's the basis upon which this great peace is going to be achieved, well, you just can't take it seriously. I mean, this is not the first time these sorts of votes have proceeded. And thankfully, in the past, Australia has stood its ground with our great friends and allies, particularly in the United States, but as well as Israel. And I'd note, importantly, our family members in the Pacific. I mean, I commend Papua New Guinea, I commend Tonga, I commend Palau and many other countries in our part of the world. I've just been in Papua New Guinea for their 50th anniversary celebrations early this week, and I took the opportunity to commend James Marape for the strong principled stand he has taken. And, it is a fantasy vote. I mean, you cannot have two states when there aren't two states. And until they can put in place the prerequisites to achieve that, this is just complete folly.
There is no doubt that the diplomatic acceleration of this process is rewarding terrorism. I've said that for many a year. Donald Trump has said that. Any sensible person can see how this rewards terrorism. And all we need to know to confirm that is to listen to the Hamas terrorists themselves. Have a look at this.
ليش كل الدول أصبحت تعترف بفلسطين الآن؟ قبل 7 أكتوبر هل في دولة تجرأت على أن تعترف بدولة فلسطين؟ أعطيني بس مثال. الآن حصاد 7 أكتوبر هو الذي خلى كل العالم يفتح عيونه على القضية الفلسطينية.
They credit the brutal slaughter of 1,200 Israelis and the taking of 250 hostages with getting this advance in their diplomatic game, if you like. Just how sad is this moment for Australian diplomacy and how dangerous, Scott Morrison?
Well, again, most of all, it is an incredibly sad day for the Australian Jewish community and the people of Israel. But the point that is being made, I mean, when October 7 happened, the only thing that the Hamas terrorists wanted more than what they have just been delivered would be the complete destruction of the state of Israel and the elimination of every single Jewish citizen. So, this is what they set out to achieve by raping, maiming, and shooting Israelis in. I mean, I was there at Kfar Aza with Boris Johnson around a month after this all took place. I saw the bullets in the walls. I saw the blood on the walls. I saw the burned out buildings. I saw the horrific images of what was done to people in front of their parents, in front of their children. And what they wanted to achieve was this, and how that can't be seen. And I'm pleased there are at least some countries in the world that are still prepared. And I applaud the opposition for holding their ground. The idea that this is a bipartisan policy in Australia is no longer, and it hasn't been now for some years. The positions we took in government were substantively reversed and have continued to be reversed until they bear absolutely no resemblance to what had previously been Australia's strongest ever position in support of the State of Israel.